What's going on, everyone? Is the Derf, and in today's video I am introducing you guys to the Lightning Glass Cannon. Dart around with ease and agility while also dealing huge DPS numbers if you want, and being able to have constant ability uptime and virtually unlimited orbs of power being printed for you at your beck and call. This build is incredibly potent, incredibly fast moving, very aggressive, may I even say ultra aggressive compared to some of the other builds that I've come up with this season. But make no mistake, OG Arc Warlock, now with grenade stats mattering with your Arc buddy, is an absolute ridiculous powerhouse. So hopefully you guys are going to like this video and the build. If you know any Guardians out there looking for an OG Arc Warlock build, please send them my way. And if you do find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Here we go. Before we get started into the build, I'm going to give a quick disclaimer. And this is not a shot at anyone. This is just a fact, okay? Unlike a lot of my builds, which are more, as people have termed them, universal and easily applicable to many different types of playing styles, this specific build right here, if you suck in general at surviving, this is going to be a hard build to get into and take into harder content if you're always dying. This build relies on speed, somewhat precision, and of course the ability to know when to rush, when to take cover, when to pop certain abilities, when to hold on to them for a couple of extra seconds, and of course when to go and revive your fellow fire team members, and or, you know, if you're raiding or running dungeons and there's limited revives, things like that. This build is not as universal as what you guys are used to on the channel, so I apologize in advance if that, you know, kind of rubs you the wrong way. That's not my intention, and it's not a shot me saying if you have problems surviving, this is a bad build to try. It's just going to take you a minute to use this build as effectively as it actually can be used. Because if you're constantly dying, you don't get any momentum. It's going to be really hard to take full advantage of this versus like a prismatic version of this build, which I'll include that link at the end of the video. So just my little disclaimer, no offense meant. You guys know I welcome all feedback and I want to just try to help as many people as possible. But if you throw this on and you immediately run into an ultimate strike or whatever portal activity and you get whomped, I understand, because at times during certain activities, when I was going through having to tweak how I was playing with this build, there were times where I was like, man, I feel like I'm just getting hit a little bit more than normal. Not necessarily because I was doing anything wrong, just because I had to get used to the type of play style that I needed to have 100% of the time when I was doing things. So anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into the super. The super of choice, I personally want to go with Chaos Reach, but you really don't. It doesn't really matter. You can pick either one. Chaos Reach is nice because it leaves you less vulnerable, and that goes directly into what I was just saying. After Chaos Reach is popped, you know, you can quickly get back to cover. You're not necessarily in the face of enemies, and you're not in direct line of fire with most bosses. The contrary to that is if you like popping your super at all times, you like it more often, and you rely more on your weapon damage for bosses, for example, Storm Trance is a great option too. If you are in a very busy activity, I'm thinking like Onslaught or things like that, and you want to be popping your super as often as possible, again, Storm Trance being a roaming super, you get way faster super regen with a build like this, or just a build in general that includes a roaming super, than you will with Chaos Reach. But that's not to say if you're one to hold on to your super just for, you know, champs and bosses or mini bosses, then Chaos Reach is probably the one for you to pick. For abilities, I go with the Healing Rift. The jump doesn't matter, whatever you feel comfortable with. I prefer Ball Lightning, doesn't really matter for the melee. And for the grenade, I 100% recommend the Flashbang Grenade. The Flashbang Grenade has the lowest cooldown as far as being able to regenerate it quickly, and it also can be consumed by your getaway artist. For fragments, first up on the list is Electrostatic Mine. Defeating a target with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. You will be constantly amplified with this build, and you will be constantly jolting literally every target that you dump one of your buddies' rounds into. Next up is going to be Ionic Sentry. Defeat targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities to charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning between nearby targets, granting a stack of bolt charge with each hit. Deploy an Ionic Sentry, blinding nearby targets on impact. Ionic Sentry damage is now scaled by the enhanced benefit of the grenade stat. So that's a key one here. It was one of the things that I was going to question when I first logged on after the recent update by Bungie. But yes, Ionic Sentry is now functioning. They call it, I mean, it always was a turret, by kind of trade, it is a sentry, but it does directly benefit from the grenade stat. So the higher your grenade stat, the faster everything dies, basically. For fragments, first up is Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. Collecting an Ionic Trace grants you a stack of Bolt Charge. You are going to want arc weapons with this, and you want to try to use them relatively as often as possible. The trade-off of this is, of course, using kinetic weapons, but we'll get into weapons here in a second. Next up is going to be Spark of Frequency. Melee hits increase your equipped weapon's reload speed and stability for a short duration. While amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. The first part of this I don't really care about. I mean, I will be using my melee from time to time, but I'm not heavily dumping my energy into using melee to try to get me out of a jam anyways. So the second part, while being amplified, I gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. That is what you want. Next up is going to be Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with a bolt charge creates an Ionic Trace. Again, just like with being able to spam your turret, you are also going to be getting back huge amounts of Ionic Traces, which means your abilities are going to be constantly refreshed from virtually just doing nothing except standing there and letting these things track to you. Last but not least is Spark of Shock. Your arc grenades jolt targets. Now, this does not say it on here like it does with the Ionic Sentry, but because your arc buddy now has all the correlation with everything grenade, Spark of Shock allows your arc buddy to jolt every target that it hits. That means things like Overload Champs are going to get stunned. Yeah, Overload Champs are going to get stunned by your arc buddy, which means all the blinding explosions that you create with your bolt charge and or Ionic Sentry, I think is what I mean to say, will take care of your unstoppable champs. So then you really only have to worry about barriers. For stat distribution, I recommend speccing into grenade, weapons, and super in that order. Class doesn't matter that much. Health does matter unless you are used to running with the low health stat. Again, that's kind of what my intro before going through all the options you see on your screen here was before we went and talked about the supers. That's kind of why I said the way that I have it set up makes you kind of more of a glass cannon. You have high damage output, but your health is a little bit limited. So again, be mindful of that when you're making this. Now, you can make an argument to just drop the grenade to closer to 100 and put some of that extra stat into the health, so your health gets up to maybe a semi more respectable 50, 60, 70. That's perfectly fine too. Again, you'll have to make it your own. You'll have to decide how you want to prioritize it, and you'll have to decide how much of the universal nature you're used to with most of my builds you want to sacrifice to try to maybe stay alive a little bit longer, either by just being a little bit more evasive on the battlefield, or if you're going to use this more of in a niche setting, like say a dungeon or something where there's not a ton of action going on at all times. For weapons, I'm going to give you the top 3 that I recommend for this build, and then we're going to talk about immediately backups. The first up is Giver's Blessing. Roll this thing with Demolitionist and Kinetic Tremors. You'll be set forever. Next up is going to be Unfall. Reverberation and Jolting Feedback are a good combination, but there's a lot of good you can make an argument for Sleight of Hand, for example. Just pick whatever's best, but always have Jolting Feedback on. Last but not least, and I understand that not everyone has this, so I apologize in advance if you get offended by this, but Microcosm still absolutely wrecks. It also does count as a kinetic weapon, so any kills that you do get, which you shouldn't be using this for ads anyways, but if you do, will grant you progress towards your Ionic Sentry. Now, I did that to do this because I don't normally do that. I break it down by, kinetic energy and heavy. If you don't want to use what I have set up, you want to spec into other elements, these are the ways that I would do it. First up would be Mint Retrograde. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. Hopefully everyone's got a good Mint Retrograde roll. It still does insane damage. Next up is going to be Centrifuge. Centrifuge, I did a build not that long ago where I was describing how it feels like it hits like a truck. It still feels like that. And with a build like this, you're going to add to all things that you love with Arc. And then finally, last but not least, you can either spec into Unwavering Duty or you can throw on the Boomslang. Now, the reason that these two are important is because depending on what you select with your artifact, you could roll with Unwavering Duty and Mint Retrograde, and you could spec into proccing Radiant with this build if you select the Flame, Fiber, and Freeze. So when you're picking your weapons out, or if you just want to try something else out, these are the immediate alternates that I would highly recommend. And again, if you don't have Microcosm, but you want to stay with the Arc theme, I highly recommend throwing on Boomslang. This is just a random roll that I had that had Jolting Feedback, but you want Jolting Feedback and you want, probably Rapid Hit or, something that's got some decent range on it at a bare minimum. The reload speed on this is abysmal, but, it is what it is. It's just for show to let you guys know. Boomslang still wrecks. The one that I have is on another character. If you don't like any of those options or you're just trying to goof around and you want to find out what might work better or what you like better, Outbreak Perfected, Everburning Glitz, Force Memorializer. This thing absolutely shreds, by the way. Mida Multi-Tool, for obvious reasons, and of course the Sturm. Any of those options will fit the build very well because they're all kinetic. In the energy slot, if you don't want to use Centrifuge, you can absolutely rock Ergo Sum. Get one with the Arc Conductor, and you're going to be pretty well set. You could also make an argument for Lodestar because of the jolting ability it has. You could also make an argument for Graviton Spike, and of course, the Odolite. I don't really like the Odolite, but it is pretty nice that it comes with Volshot. That is pretty attractive when, thinking about a micro missile frame grenade launcher. So just use whatever you think best. And again, if you're not worried about champs, none of this is going to matter for champ, anyways. Just pick what you like to use the most. And then, of course, we already went through all the heavy weapon options. I guess you could theoretically put something that isn't like in a soft sunset right now. Here, I'll bust them out right now just because I've got a couple of seconds to burn here. Good options that you could use in the heavy slot. You could make an argument for Opaque Hourglass. You could certainly make an argument for that. You could also make an argument for one of my favorite grenade launchers, the Hula Bulu. That's an awesome way to just blind the battlefield, especially if you have chain reaction. And you could also make an argument for Crux Termination, the fourth. Those three are really good options. I guess in a pinch, or depending on what your playstyle is, Thunderlord is still king. I mean, it's been collecting dust in my vault because I've been trying to not, bust out a bunch of sunset weapons, or soft sunset, I should say, for my build videos because it's, not the latest and greatest. But when it comes to DPS, Thunderlord is still up there with the best of them. You can make an argument for that too. And if you're doing distant DPS, Darcy, of course, would fit the bill for that as well. So Getaway Artist, one of the most popular exotic pieces of armor in every Warlock's arsenal right now, and hopefully it stays that way for a long time because Arc Buddies have been a fan favorite for years, and now we get bonuses with them finally. Dynamic Duo, convert your Arc Grenade into an Arc Soul and become amplified. The Arc Soul functions as an autonomous turret. One passive ability that this gives you is grenade regen. With every hit that your Arc Buddy does, you gain a little bit back on your grenade regen. I think it's something like 5%. So you still have to get probably 20 hits just for this thing to reload all the way. But again, the higher your grenade stat, closer to that 190%, the more percentage you get back. So yeah, it's about 20 hits, but it doesn't really feel like that in most cases. And again, if you're running this with a weapon like Giver's Blessing that's got Demolitionist, you're getting it back so dang quick. And that's what you're going to love about this. For the rest of the armor, go ahead and spec into whatever general armor mod that you need. For the helmet, you can roll this a lot of ways. I highly recommend putting on Ashes to Assets, especially if you are running Chaos Reach. You really only need one siphon, and that's going to be the one that's going to be your main ag clear. The other ones should be there to deal backup DPS and, of course, DPS. And then depending on what you pick, you could either run a heavy ammo finder, a special ammo finder, or you could also run a second ashes to assets if you're not worried about using your heavy ammo ever. For the gauntlets, go ahead and put on 3 firepowers and then forget about it. Print your orbs of power and move on with your day. For the chest armor, put on 2 elemental resistance mods and make sure you put on a kinetic ammo generation, especially if you do not have a heavy ammo generation mod on your helmet. This will just help increase the ammo generation meter by your kinetic weapons. For the legs, make sure you put on Innervation, Absolution, and another Absolution. This is one of the few instances where double Absolution actually works very, very well. You're not worried about getting your melee back anyways, at least not really. You know, it's not really going to be driving, you know, any kind of entry into a choke point by, you know, some gaggle enemies. So put on double Absolution. Your grenade and your your grenade has its lowest cooldown possible with the flashbang already equipped, and just enjoy being able to call down Arc Soul after Arc Soul after Arc Soul before the one that you currently have fully runs out. Last but not least, in the class item, put on your class font, your Reaper, and your Bomber. Make sure you occasionally do use your class ability. If nothing else, learn how to use your class ability for healing by standing behind cover when you're dealing damage in a very tight or possibly a bullet spongy situation. For the artifact, I have mine set up so that you can mod it how you want, but we're going to go over a couple of different ways you can change it up a little bit depending on how you want. In the first column, this one's pretty much non-negotiable. Anti-barrier, scout and pulse, unstoppable sidearm hand cannon, and of course overload rapid fire. In the second column, rapid precision rifling. This is if you decide to roll with the scout rifle. You want light forged lead because of your kinetic weapon ad clear, but again, you're going to take that off if you're not using it. Third up is going to be flame, fiber, and freeze. Now this is in the event that you are wanting to get more orbs of power from weapon final blows, and you are running mint and your unwavering duty. So put this on. You're going to have to sacrifice your ashes to assets modification on your helmet, but you'll get orbs of power from using your weapons more. So it kind of balances out. In the third column, make sure you put on reciprocal draw if you've got a sidearm equipped. Refresh threads is important here, picking up that elemental pickup, matching your subclass element, grants energy to your least charge ability. This is just an easy way to get energy back. And then elemental coalescence and that fresh bullets smell in the fourth column. Now, some might argue that elemental daze is important. Sure, I completely agree with that. It's just nice to get a little bit of extra damage with my kinetic weapons when I'm picking up an ammo brick, especially if I'm generating ammo bricks somewhat regularly and somewhat because I'm using my heavy or my special ammo weapons in some kind of a semi-organized cyclical fashion. Finally, in the final column, you have seen it here. Only one other time, I think, Radiant Shrapnel is not equipped for this build. So don't put that on because you're going to have a bad time. I guess theoretically you could put this on if you put your Unwavering Duty on, but you're not using your Unwavering Duty for anything other than DPS anyways. So the chances of you proccing that solar projectile are pretty small. It's going to be a waste of one of your 12 options. So instead, put on Shield Crush because you're going to be constantly amplified. And oh, by the way, your grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage while you're amplified. So just another way to get your grenade back faster. And then finally, Elemental Overdrive. Picking up an elemental pickup or tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same element. So using your special or heavy ammo arc weapons are going to help this. Picking up elemental pickups if you are rolling with a strand and a solar heavy and kinetic weapon are going to be nice. But the key here is trying to get your ionic traces. And if you are not using your sidearm, your special ammo sidearm, which you should be using, it's probably important for you to, incorporate how to cycle through your weapons a little bit better. Now, in the fourth column, I can say you can throw out that that fresh bullet smell and easily put on energy acceleration if you are running with the same sidearm that I am. So those are some ways that you can change it up. You guys can let me know in the comments how you have it set up and what works best for you. This is kind of the most universal way I can build this without speccing too much into what I specifically prefer. For different things, because I do switch it up depending on what activity I'm running. For example, Heaven's Vengeance, I'm going to have different ones selected than I would for running a reclaim. And that's a very apples to oranges example, but you guys get what I mean, I'm sure. So one of the other benefits of the season and using not the sunset weapons is that you get additional bonus damages on top of everything else. So your damage resistance, if you're using the featured gear, minus your getaway artist, unfortunately, you get at least a 9.6 damage buff or damage resistance buff if it's all tier 4. Kinetic weapon slot, you get 8%. Energy weapon slot, you get 8%. And power weapon slot, because we have an exotic equipped, is a cool 10%. And because we're using Chaos Reach, Microcosm makes the most sense because of Paracausal Imbuement, which right here, immediately after your super ends, this weapon gains bonus damage. And believe me, it's enough that if you don't get this proc because you don't pull it out right away, or you die after you're using your Storm Trance, for example, because you're being careless, you will lose your Paracausal Imbuement, which is the whole point of putting Microcosm on in the first place, is its DPS potential. So anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys would change. Let me know how you're breaking down your stats. Are you having melee up to about a 5? Are you taking all 3 of those stats down to 25, health, melee, and class ability, and just you've got the best rolls, grenades, super, and weapons? That's the only thing you care about. You really can't go wrong with speccing heavily into that, but it's totally up to you guys. Let me know in the comments what works best for you, and let me know what you guys think about the play style you kind of have to have when you're running an OG Arc Warlock. If you guys did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who is looking for a way to create an OG Arc build that might be a little bit more aggressive in terms of aggressive versus playing safe, but has the potential for huge damage output numbers, feel free to share this video with them or send them my way. My goal is to help as many people as possible. As always, I will have a dim link in the video description. And if by chance you guys are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, I highly recommend hopping into my Discord. There are some really great people in there that are willing to help you out. We have some good Sherpas in there as well, now starting to kind of trickle in. And I'm grateful for everyone in there that's trying to help other people. That's what the community is all about. And of course, that's what I started this channel all about. You guys saw my recent Guardians helping Guardians raid. I know that was just Root of Nightmares, and I know that a lot of people, I don't need to run Root of Nightmares, but it's helping Guardians. Guardians helping Guardians is what the community is all about, and that was just, that was a run from all the community members, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and I'm sure they did too. So anyways, I'm going to switch over to the boss fight, and we will wrap this thing up. So one of the reasons why I picked showcasing a strike, or I guess a portal activity like Caldera for this video, is this build is going to function very well even in activities where there's not a lot of busyness going on. So just think about the things that you're going to be able to get by activating your Arc Soul in general. So your Sentient Soul, it lasts, 15, 16 seconds, somewhere in there. That's a long time, for you to kill enemies with a weapon like Giver's Blessing, for example, that rolls with Demolitionist to get it back. And that's just in an activity like this where there's really not that many adds. There's not, the boss isn't super aggressive, certainly nothing that nobody can handle, right? But now I'll take it into that activity where it seems like you don't ever get a break from the action until the entire portion of whatever strike or portal activity, dungeon, pinnacle op, or whatever is completed. I'm thinking about like maybe the final encounter of like Encore, for example, where it's just like non-stop activity, non-stop ads, non-stop majors, things like that. This build is going to hold up just fine, and just think about how you're going to be able to just spam Sentient Soul after Sentient Soul, you're going to get insane super regen just because of the sheer amount of damage you're going to do. And then don't forget that Ionic Sentry. That all counts, you know, based against your grenade stat. So the higher your grenade stat is, the more insane that this build is going to be. And again, you know, it's not like there's not a billion builds surrounding getaway artists out there right now. But this one that I've got right here, not that it's unique or brand new or no one's ever thought of it before, but, you know, in harder endgame activity, survivability is going to be an issue. So the best thing you can do for yourself is make sure that your abilities are back 100% of the time, and this build does that for you. So thank you guys as always for your support. Hopefully someone finds this video helpful, and you know, share it with a guardian in need who is looking for a build like this and would love a build like this. But I will see you guys next time. Again, thank you for all your support. Take care.